Hey guys, just before we begin my review of Godzilla vs. Kong, I'm just letting you know that there are very small spoilers, but they mainly just talk about how this movie is structured and what the characters are like. It shouldn't hinder your experience of the movie, but I'm just warning you. I might do a spoiler review later, but I'll give it a day or two just so everybody can see this movie. Well, enough talking, let's get right into the video. Godzilla vs. Kong is the fourth movie in Legendary's Monsterverse. For those of you who don't know, Legendary has been tasked with creating a cinematic universe revolving all around all of the famous Toho kaijus. So far, there have been 3 movies, starting with Godzilla, the Godzilla reboot, just called Godzilla in 2014, Kong Skull Island in 2017, and Godzilla King of the Monsters back in 2019. So far, Legendary has been doing an okay job with their take on these towering monsters. I do commend them though, since it's a little hard modernizing these characters that were originally made all in the late 50s. But today, we're not focusing on those movies right now. Instead, we're focusing on the rematch that's almost half a decade in the making. Get it? Because the original King Kong vs. Godzilla came out like 50 years ago. Never mind, everybody's already made that joke. So how well does Godzilla vs. Kong bring these two iconic characters together? Pretty well, actually. Where this movie really succeeds is the amazing fight sequences. They are worth the price of admission alone. Instead of holding back Godzilla vs. Kong, it just lets out all of its rage. This is exactly the type of fights you want to see from a kaiju movie, much less a Godzilla vs. Kong movie. The fights are so well choreographed and organized that they're probably the best in the entire Monsterverse. Especially the last fight is definitely where this movie shines brightest. And the set pieces where these fights take place look amazing. Also, the CGI on the monsters is some of the best I've ever seen. This movie also brings in some really creative stuff as well, especially something for longtime kaiju fans near the end, so stay tuned for that. Unfortunately, Godzilla fans might be a little disappointed because this more focuses on Kong than a Godzilla movie. You could kind of tell this from the trailers, and I'll admit I was a little disappointed as well. But it's actually pretty well executed here. It felt more of a sequel to Skull Island, since it's this time around they expanded more on Kong and his background as a character, but Godzilla already has its own 2 movies that do just the same. Think of it this way. Remember Captain America Civil War? Pretend that it instead called itself Captain America vs. Iron Man or something like that, because it kind of was. That movie would then more paint Captain America as the good guy instead of Iron Man, and that's kind of what this movie does for Kong. But that doesn't mean that Godzilla fans will be disappointed, because this movie really just shows how relentlessly brutal Godzilla can be, which in turn amplifies the huge battles. There is one massive thing that Godzilla vs. Kong gets wrong though, and that is the humans. The Monsterverse's biggest problem is that their movies seem to focus on way too much on the humans, and they aren't like really all that interesting, like at all. Skull Island seemed to be the only movie that can make them somewhat interesting, but for some reason the 2 Godzilla movies just couldn't. I don't like this because it seems to be just missing the reason we watch kaiju movies all along, and it's because of those cool monster fights. While there was plenty of this in Godzilla vs. Kong, there was also some very poorly written characters. In fact, all of the humans are super poorly written. If I were to watch this movie again, I'd probably just skip through all of the human parts to see the awesome monster battles. For some reason, everybody had to have a backstory. You'll constantly hear, oh yeah, Ryan, the guy that died 5 minutes ago, tomorrow he was going to cure world hunger, get married, and have 5 kids. Yeah, he was my long-lost cousin, and that's why I planned on saving the world. And then they just move on and don't ever mention it again. I have no idea why they even tell us if it's not important. The bad guys are just your basic corporate bad guys that work for your basic evil company, corporation that you see in almost every movie, so nothing too special here. All of this sucks because if the humans would have been well written and interesting, then Godzilla vs. Kong would have been an easy 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, they weren't, and that brings us down a few points. Luckily, the fights are the real highlights of this movie, so instead, I give Godzilla vs. Kong an 8 out of 10.